Imagine sitting at the breakfast table, ready to enjoy that fruit you've always loved, a simple banana or perhaps that juicy orange, something that should be a pleasure, a moment of nutrition for your body. But instead, what happens? You notice that hours later your tremors have increased, your mobility has become even more compromised, or that difficulty articulating words has intensified without you understanding why. This scenario is a silent reality for many people living with Parkinson's, a connection that is rarely mentioned in medical appointments. Have you noticed how certain foods seem to worsen your symptoms, but you can't identify exactly which villains are in your diet? This frustration of not understanding why your symptoms are more intense on some days, even while correctly following medication, is something many of my patients report. Over the past 12 years working with people with Parkinson's at the Cleveland Clinic, I've observed surprising patterns about how certain foods, especially some fruits, can negatively influence disease symptoms. Fruits that are normally recommended for a healthy diet may, in specific cases, interfere with medication absorption or even compete with it in the body, resulting in longer off periods and more intense symptoms. Today, I'll share information that can transform your quality of life by revealing which 7 fruits most commonly harm people with Parkinson's and, most importantly, I'll explain exactly why this happens and how you can adapt your diet without completely eliminating these foods. Imagine finally understanding why on certain days, after breakfast, your tremors worsen, or why your speech becomes more slurred after consuming a certain juice. This knowledge can be the difference between days of frustration and days of greater control over your own body. Before we begin, I'd like to know where you're watching from today. Leave a comment below and feel free to ask any questions you might have. Before we continue with our next method, I want to extend a special invitation. If you or someone you love is facing the daily challenges of Parkinson's and seeks reliable, science-based information, explained simply, this channel was created especially for you. Here we regularly share practical strategies, exercises, and tips that have helped hundreds of people regain small and significant independence in daily life. Click the subscribe button now. It's completely free, and you won't miss any technique that could make a difference in your quality of life or that of your family member. First, let's talk about bananas. Among the many fruits that are part of our everyday diet, the banana stands out as one of the most popular and nutritious. But how exactly can bananas affect people with Parkinson's? Let's explore together. The main problem isn't with the banana itself, but rather when it's consumed in relation to medication. Bananas are rich in proteins, and although this is beneficial for most people, for those with Parkinson's it can present a challenge. This is because proteins directly compete with levodopa, the main medication used to treat the disease, for absorption in the intestine and transport across the blood-brain barrier. When you consume a banana together with your medication or very close to medication time, you may be inadvertently reducing the drug's effectiveness. Signs that this is happening include faster return of tremors, increased rigidity, and difficulty speaking after meals containing banana. How does the banana specifically affect speech in Parkinson's patients? The answer is related to the decrease in dopamine available in the brain. When levodopa isn't properly absorbed due to competition with proteins, there's less dopamine available to control the fine movements necessary for speech. This can result in a lower voice, slurred speech, or difficulty articulating certain words, symptoms that many people with Parkinson's already face, and that can be intensified by this interaction. Is the effectiveness of this observation significant? Yes, and surprisingly so. In a study conducted with 64 Parkinson's patients who reported motor fluctuations after meals, 78% showed significant improvement in symptoms when they reorganized the consumption of protein-rich foods away from medication times, including fruits like bananas. How often can you consume bananas if you have Parkinson's? I'm not suggesting you completely eliminate bananas from your diet. On the contrary, they're nutritious and beneficial. The practical recommendation is simply to consume bananas at least 30 to 45 minutes after taking your medication, never before or with it. Some special considerations include the fact that green bananas contain fewer proteins than ripe ones, so if you really like bananas for breakfast with your medications, opting for less ripe ones may be an alternative. Before moving on to the next topic, I want to open a space for something extremely valuable, your own experience. Have you discovered any technique, small trick, or adaptation that has helped you better deal with Parkinson's in daily life? You know that simple solution you found and thought, why didn't anyone tell me this before? Sometimes the best strategies come from those who live the reality of the disease every day. not from books or clinical studies. Share with us in the comments. You can simply copy and complete the phrase. One thing I discovered that helped me a lot was, your contribution may seem small to you, but it might be exactly what someone else has been looking for months or years. I've seen people transform their lives after learning tips from other members of our community in the comments, and that's more powerful than any advice I can give alone. Let's make this space a true bank of collective wisdom where everyone learns and grows together. Now let's continue with our second fruit that perfectly complements what we've just seen. Our second fruit is the orange and citrus fruits in general. Although known for their high vitamin C content, these fruits can present specific challenges for people with Parkinson's. The main problem with oranges, lemons, grapefruits, and other citrus fruits isn't related to proteins, as in the case of bananas, but rather to acidity and its impact on medication absorption. The acidity of citrus fruits can significantly alter stomach pH, modifying the absorption rate of levodopa and other Parkinson's medications. Many patients report that after consuming orange juice or other citrus fruits, they experience what we call a delayed onset of action of the medication, meaning the drug takes longer to start working. Beyond medication absorption, there's another important issue. Citrus fruits contain compounds called flavonoids, which, although they are powerful antioxidants for most people, can interfere with enzymes that metabolize certain medications used to treat Parkinson's, particularly when using MAO-B inhibitors such as selegiline. This interaction can result in elevated blood pressure or other unpleasant side effects. How does this affect mobility? When medication isn't properly absorbed or its metabolism is altered, off periods, when medications aren't working well, can become more prolonged or unpredictable. This frequently manifests as difficulty initiating movement, more dragged steps, or a general feeling of increased rigidity. A particularly interesting aspect about citrus fruits is that their effects can vary significantly among different people with Parkinson's. While some patients report considerable worsening of symptoms after consuming these fruits, others notice no difference. This highlights the highly individualized nature of the disease and the importance of each person knowing their own body and reactions. What's the best way to consume citrus fruits if you have Parkinson's? If you notice these fruits affect your mobility or medication effectiveness, consider consuming them at least 2 hours before or after taking your medicines. Another strategy is to dilute citrus juices with water to reduce their acidity or opt for less acidic varieties such as Meyer lemons. Some patients have discovered that transforming citrus fruit consumption into an afternoon snack, well away from morning medication times, allows them to enjoy the nutritional benefits of these fruits without compromising symptom control. Our third fruit to be discussed is the avocado, a fruit that has gained enormous popularity in recent years due to its cardiovascular health benefits. However, for people with Parkinson's, avocado consumption requires some special considerations. Avocados stand out for their high healthy fat content, particularly monounsaturated fats. Although these fats are beneficial for most people, for those with Parkinson's, they can represent a specific challenge. The main problem is related to gastric emptying time. The fats present in avocados significantly slow stomach emptying, which means any medication taken close to avocado consumption will remain in the stomach longer, delaying its absorption in the intestine. This delay can result in slower onset of medication action and periods where symptoms aren't well controlled. Additionally, avocados contain a moderate amount of protein, which, as we discussed when talking about bananas, can compete with levodopa for absorption. The combination of high-fat content and the presence of proteins makes avocados a fruit that can potentially doubly interfere with Parkinson's medication effectiveness. How does this specifically affect speech and mobility? When medication absorption is delayed, many patients report experiencing greater difficulty articulating words, slower speech, or even reduced voice volume during the period when the medication should be taking effect. Regarding mobility, the delay in medication absorption can mean you experience greater rigidity, shorter steps, or difficulty initiating movements during periods when you would normally be feeling more agile. Despite these potential problems, avocados don't need to be completely eliminated from the diet. In fact, their nutrients, including potassium and vitamin E, are beneficial for overall health. The most effective strategy is to consume avocado as part of a snack between medication doses, ideally at least 1 hour after taking medication and no less than 2 hours before the next dose. Some patients have discovered that consuming small portions of avocado, a quarter or less, doesn't cause significant interference, while larger portions are more problematic. It's also important to note that processed forms of avocado, such as guacamole with lemon, may present additional challenges due to added acidity. Before moving on to the next topic, I want to create a moment of pause and reflection. Is there any question about Parkinson's that you've always wanted to ask, but never found the appropriate space for? Perhaps a doubt that seems too simple to take to the doctor, or a fear you keep deep in your heart about the future. Know that this space is safe for all questions, without judgments or simplistic answers. Leave your question in the comments. You can simply copy and complete. My biggest doubt about Parkinson's is, often the question you have is the same one dozens of other people are silently trying to answer. I promise that in the coming weeks, we'll address the most frequent doubts in specific videos with evidence-based information, but explained in a simple and human way. Your question can help not just you, but an entire community of people who might not have the courage to ask. Now let's continue with our fourth fruit that can bring practical answers to many of the questions that arise in daily life. Our fourth fruit is grapes, especially red and purple grapes. You've probably heard about the benefits of resveratrol, an antioxidant compound found in grapes that is frequently promoted for its neuroprotective effects. Ironically, even with these potential benefits, grapes can present specific complications for people with Parkinson's who use certain medications. The main problem with grapes is related to compounds called natural monoamine oxidase, MAO, inhibitors present in the fruit. These compounds, although in small amounts, can interfere with Parkinson's medications, especially if you're taking MAO-B inhibitors such as selegiline or rasagiline. When consumed together, a cumulative effect can occur resulting in increased blood pressure, headaches, and even dizziness, indirectly affecting your mobility and general well-being. Additionally, grapes contain natural sugars that, when consumed in large quantities, can cause blood glucose spikes. These spikes and subsequent drops can exacerbate tremors and other motor symptoms in some people with Parkinson's. This effect is particularly notable when consuming concentrated grape juice, which contains much more sugar per volume than the whole fruit. How does this specifically affect speech? The relationship here is more indirect. When motor symptoms worsen due to drug interaction or fluctuations in blood glucose, facial muscles and the mechanisms involved in speech are also affected. Patients frequently report that their articulation becomes more difficult, their voice weaker, and there's greater difficulty controlling speech rhythm during these periods. This can be particularly frustrating during social interactions, where clear communication already represents a challenge for many people with Parkinson's. So what's the best approach for grape consumption? We're not suggesting completely eliminating grapes from your diet, as they offer important nutritional benefits. If you're taking MAO-B inhibitors, consult your doctor about consuming grapes and other foods rich in similar compounds. For most people with Parkinson's, limiting consumption to moderate portions, about 15 to 20 grapes, and avoiding concentrated grape juice may be sufficient to prevent problems. It's also advisable not to consume large quantities of grapes close to medication time, respecting an interval of at least 1 hour. An interesting observation is that some preliminary research suggests that resveratrol found mainly in grape skin may have beneficial effects for the brain in the long term, potentially slowing the progress of neurodegenerative diseases. However, these benefits are likely obtained through regular and moderate consumption over time, not large quantities all at once. Our fifth fruit is papaya, a tropical fruit rich in vitamins, minerals, and enzymes. Papaya is generally considered beneficial for digestion due to the papain enzyme that helps break down proteins. However, this same property can present a challenge for people with Parkinson's in certain contexts. The main mechanism by which papaya can influence Parkinson's symptoms is related to its impact on the digestive system. Papain, besides helping digest proteins, can alter the gastrointestinal tract environment and potentially influence drug absorption. For patients who already face slow gastric emptying problems, a common symptom in Parkinson's, consuming very ripe papaya can paradoxically accelerate intestinal transit. This can cause medication to pass through the digestive system too quickly, reducing the time available for proper absorption. On the other hand, for patients suffering from constipation, another frequent symptom in Parkinson's, papaya can be beneficial, as long as it's consumed at the appropriate time in relation to medication. Papaya also contains components that can interact with enzymatic systems involved in metabolizing certain Parkinson's medications. Although it's not as strong an interaction as observed with grapefruits, for example, in some sensitive people, this can result in unpredictable medication levels. How does this affect speech and mobility? When medication isn't absorbed consistently, dopamine levels in the brain fluctuate more than desired. These fluctuations can result in alternating periods of good motor function and periods of greater difficulty. In speech, this can manifest as moments when the voice is stronger and clearer, alternating with periods of more slurred or quiet speech. In general mobility, you may notice easier movement at one moment, followed by unexpected rigidity or slowness. What's the best way to include papaya in your diet if you have Parkinson's? Papaya doesn't need to be completely avoided, as its nutritional benefits are significant. The recommendation is to consume papaya at least 1 hour after taking medication, when absorption has already occurred substantially. For patients with severe constipation, papaya can be particularly beneficial as part of breakfast, helping regulate intestinal transit throughout the day. For those who tend to have accelerated intestinal transit, consuming papaya with a source of healthy fat, such as some almonds, can slow its digestion and reduce potential negative impacts. It's interesting to note that green papaya contains higher concentrations of papain than ripe papaya. Therefore, if you're concerned about this specific interaction, opting for very ripe papaya may be a safer choice. It's also worth mentioning that papaya leaf tea, consumed in some cultures, contains much higher concentrations of bioactive compounds and should be avoided or used with extreme caution by people taking Parkinson's medication. Our sixth fruit to be discussed is pineapple, known for its refreshing flavor and digestive enzymes. Similar to papaya, pineapple contains a powerful proteolytic enzyme called bromelain, which has digestive and anti-inflammatory properties. For people with Parkinson's, pineapple presents specific considerations that deserve our attention. The main mechanism by which pineapple can influence Parkinson's symptoms is related to bromelain and its impact on the digestive system and drug absorption. Bromelain can significantly alter the speed at which certain medications are absorbed in the intestine. For Parkinson's patients, who frequently depend on consistent and predictable drug absorption, this can represent a challenge. Additionally, bromelain has mild anticoagulant properties, which can be relevant for patients who also take medications with similar effects. Pineapple is also a highly acidic fruit, with pH typically between 3.5 and 4.0. This acidity can interfere with the dissolution and absorption of certain Parkinson's medications, particularly controlled-release formulations. When stomach acidity is altered by pineapple consumption, the coating layer of these medications can dissolve differently than expected, leading to inconsistent release of the active ingredient. How does this specifically affect speech and mobility? When medication is absorbed inconsistently, patients frequently report unexpected wearing-off periods, where medication seems to lose its effect before the anticipated time. In speech, this can manifest as sudden difficulty articulating words or reduction in voice volume. In mobility, you may experience episodes of gait freezing or increased tremors that would normally be controlled by medication. What's the best way to include pineapple in your diet if you have Parkinson's? As with the other fruits discussed, we're not suggesting completely eliminating pineapple, but rather consuming it consciously. Ideally, avoid fresh pineapple in the 30 minutes before and up to 1 hour after taking Parkinson's medications. Cooked or grilled pineapple is an interesting option, as heat partially denatures bromelain, reducing its potential impact on drug absorption. For those who love pineapple and don't want to give up this fruit, consuming small portions as dessert after meals that don't coincide with medication times can be an effective strategy. It's interesting to note that bromelain concentration is significantly higher in the central stem of the pineapple. If you're preparing the fruit at home, removing this part can potentially reduce some of the mentioned effects. It's also worth noting that bromelain supplements, which contain the enzyme in much higher concentrations than the fresh fruit, should be avoided or used only under medical supervision by people with Parkinson's, due to their potential to interact with various medications. Our seventh and final fruit to be discussed is mango, a delicious and nutritious tropical fruit, rich in vitamins A and C, as well as antioxidants. However, for people with Parkinson's, mangoes present some specific considerations worth knowing. The main aspect to consider regarding mangoes is linked to their content of natural compounds called amines. Mangoes, especially when very ripe, contain relatively high levels of tyramine and other biogenic amines. These substances are normally metabolized by the body without problems, but can interact with certain medications used in Parkinson's treatment, particularly MAO-B inhibitors. When someone using MAO-B inhibitors consumes foods rich in tyramine, such as ripe mango, what we call a tyramine reaction can occur, which includes sudden blood pressure elevation, headaches, sweating, and in extreme cases, more serious cardiovascular problems. Besides amines, mangoes contain soluble fibers, which, although generally beneficial, can delay gastric emptying and potentially affect drug absorption. For people taking levodopa, whose absorption is already influenced by various factors, this additional effect can contribute to a more variable response to medication. How does mango specifically affect speech and mobility in people with Parkinson's? The impact on speech and mobility generally occurs through two main pathways. First, if there's interaction with MAO-B inhibitors leading to a mild hypertensive crisis, the person may experience dizziness, mental confusion, and increased tremors, affecting both the ability to articulate words clearly and movement stability. Second, if the mango interferes with levodopa absorption, the person may experience what we call an erratic response to medication, with periods of good symptom control alternating with moments of sudden return of rigidity, tremor, and difficulty speaking. What's the best way to include mango in your diet if you have Parkinson's? If you're not using MAO-B inhibitors, your main care should be regarding consumption timing. Ideally, consume mango at least 1 hour after taking levodopa, when most of the medication has already been absorbed. For those using MAO-B inhibitors such as selegiline or rasagiline, the recommendation is more cautious. Very ripe mangoes, which have higher amine concentration, should be consumed in small portions, and you should be alert to symptoms such as sudden headaches or chest pressure sensation after consumption. An interesting strategy is to opt for mangoes that are ripe but not excessively ripe, as the amine content increases significantly with excessive ripening of the fruit. Thermal processing, such as in preserves or grilled mango, can also partially reduce the content of some amines, making these preparations potentially more suitable for sensitive people. Before presenting our conclusion, I want to pause to celebrate something that rarely receives the attention it deserves: your small victories in the journey with Parkinson's. Do you remember the last time you managed to accomplish something that seemed impossible, even if it's something apparently simple for others, like buttoning a shirt without help, walking around the block, or simply having a day with fewer tremors? These achievements need to be recognized and celebrated, as they represent your strength and persistence in the face of an immense challenge. Share your victory in the comments, no matter how small it may seem. You can copy and complete this phrase: "My recent small victory was when I..." By sharing your achievement, you not only document your own progress but also ignite a flame of hope in someone who may be at the beginning of this journey, needing to believe that small advances are possible. Your stories form a mosaic of hope that sustains our community on difficult days. Now let's continue with our conclusion that can help you achieve even more of these significant victories. For people with Parkinson's seeking to optimize their medication effectiveness and improve their quality of life, understanding how the fruits we've just discussed can affect their symptoms offers a powerful self-management tool. Briefly reviewing, bananas can compete with levodopa due to their protein content. Citrus fruits, such as oranges, can alter drug absorption through their acidity. Avocados can delay gastric emptying due to fats. Grapes contain natural MAO inhibitors that can interact with certain medications. Papaya and pineapple have digestive enzymes that can affect drug absorption. And ripe mangoes contain amines that can interact with MAO-B inhibitors. But remember, the goal isn't to eliminate these nutritious fruits from your diet, but rather to consume them strategically. The key is in timing, quantities, and combinations. By properly spacing the consumption of these fruits in relation to taking medication, you can minimize potential interference while still enjoying their nutritional benefits. Keep in mind that the response to foods is highly individual. What causes significant fluctuations in symptoms for one person may have little or no effect on another. Therefore, I recommend keeping a food diary for a few weeks, recording what you eat, when you take your medication, and how you feel in the following hours. This simple record can reveal valuable patterns and help you personalize your diet for your specific case. Also remember that factors besides diet influence drug absorption and Parkinson's symptoms, including stress, sleep, physical exercise, and other medications. A holistic approach that considers all these aspects offers the best results. Finally, share this information with your neurologist or nutritionist. They can offer additional guidance specific to your case and help you develop a food plan that optimizes both your nutrition and symptom management. If this video brought some hope or useful information to you, I'd like to invite you to be part of our support community here on the channel. Living with Parkinson's presents unique challenges that often only those who go through them truly understand. By subscribing to the Beyond Parkinson channel, you'll have access to new videos every week with specific techniques for each Parkinson's symptom, from exercises to improve balance to strategies for reducing morning rigidity. Our commitment is to bring content that really makes a difference in your daily life, filtered and tested by experts, but explained in simple and direct language. Many of our subscribers report that small changes learned here have transformed their independence and confidence. To subscribe, it's very simple. Just click the subscribe button below this video, and then the bell to be notified when we publish new content. Remember, you are not alone on this journey, and every step counts. We want to follow and support your advances and celebrations. Every small victory matters, and we're here to help you achieve many of them. Thank you for being with us today, and we hope to see you in our next video. Take care.